Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to our 6th episode of the Newborn Cares Week series. I'm glad to presenting you another interesting episode of our Newborn Care Week. In all the previous episodes, we had seen everything about caring for the newborn, right? But in this episode, we will be taking you through a lot many commonest problems that a newborn suffers and what a mother should know. So here joins me Dr. Aparna. Hi doctor.
Hi.
When we talk about the problems in the newborn, the first and foremost issue that most of the mothers run to a pediatric clinic or talk to the pediatrician is all about yellowing of the skin and eyes, often which we refer to as jaundice, right? So what this jaundice is and how normal or serious it is in the newborns. Are there any self-care or tips to manage this jaundice at home by skin bathing or something like that, or when to rush to the pediatrician for this jaundice?
So jaundice probably constitutes maybe 25 to 30% of the questions and the interaction we have during neonatal care. So as you rightly said, jaundice is quite common to the extent of maybe 80% of all babies having some extent of jaundice. Now roughly 1 in 5 babies would require phototherapy for treatment of newborn jaundice. So obviously it's a very common issue. The distinction between abnormal and normal jaundice can only be made by a careful clinical examination and by determination of the exact level of this bilirubin elevation. Now there are a number of norms and guidelines which we as doctors we often follow for deciding at what point we must start treatment for a certain baby. This depends upon not only the number or the level of jaundice, but also a number of other factors such as blood group of the mother and the baby. And the risk may also be more in a preterm baby, a baby born below 37 weeks of gestational age of pregnancy, or a baby who may have other complicating factors like scalp collection of blood. Sometimes we see what is called as Keffel hematoma, or babies who have a higher tendency for breaking down of these red blood cells. So all these factors have to be taken into consideration to decide which baby needs treatment for what level of jaundice. So this decision is typically made by the doctor after assessing the baby by examination and by determining the level. There are two ways of determining the level of jaundice. One is by using a skin bilirubinometer, which does not involve a blood sample. This can be used until certain milder levels of jaundice, say up to 13 to 15 milligrams of bilirubin. And beyond this, we have to only go by doing the blood test to determine the exact level. Now, unfortunately, there are not many medications that can help in treating jaundice, and still the benchmark of therapy for newborn jaundice remains the phototherapy lights, which can be administered in the hospital as and when required. Now, the role of sunlight etc. in jaundice is not very well studied, especially in severe types of jaundice. So, there may be some role in milder levels of jaundice, but the only thing which we as parents can do at home to take care of babies to prevent or to even manage pre-existing jaundice is to ensure adequate feeding.
So, doctor, nowadays, diaper usage has become so inevitable that parents are putting their babies even at homes as well, and many mothers or parents land up into the pediatric clinics with a diaper rash. So, how should these diaper rashes be prevented? Are there any home care tips to prevent these diaper rashes?
So, with regard to diaper rashes, definitely the saying that prevention is better than cure is very, very true. So the simplest way to prevent diaper rash is to keep the diaper area clean and dry. So first and foremost, the first step would be to avoid the use of the commercially available or the synthetic diapers and to use cotton cloth diapers as often as possible. So this is very much possible during the daytime when all family members would be around and available with the baby, and changing the diaper of the baby may be actually frequently possible, because cloth diapers have the advantage that once the baby passes urine or motion, one can immediately identify and change it. Also, the use of ready-made diaper creams, which typically have zinc oxide, may be useful to some extent in the prevention as well as in the treatment of the diaper rash. They are typically applied 4 to 5 times in a day, maybe for a duration of 1 to 2 weeks. The letting the baby sleep stomach down or in the prone position and letting the diaper area dry naturally may also be a good strategy, along with the application of coconut oil. All these strategies together can help to alleviate babies from the discomfort of diaper rash.
Very interesting. Doctor, all babies cry, right? And this cry is basically a part of their normal development and it's a sign of communicating their needs. But at times they cry so excessively that it impacts the emotional health of the mother and it brings in a lot of anxiety in the mother. So how to decode this excessive crying and what should a mother understand from this excessive crying? Any tips to be managed or any tips to be followed to reduce this crying at home, or when should a pediatrician be consulted for this excessive cry?
So again, one of the very complex and difficult complaints to handle is a newborn coming with excessive cry. So crying to some extent, as you said, is normal, to the extent that a newborn at around 5 to 6 weeks of age would spend roughly 3 to 4 hours in the day just crying. And this can be extremely distressing to their parents, particularly first-time parents. So one has to adopt a very methodical approach to a crying newborn. Cry can be the only sign that the newborn exhibits for hunger, for boredom, for cold temperature or very warm temperature, for want of sleep, for want of being huddled or being carried close to the skin of the mother, for want of thirst, maybe milk only for satisfying thirst, rarely due to pain, discomfort in other parts of the body, such as a diaper rash, a blocked nose, ear pain, urinary tract infection, pain from the abdomen, or uncomfortable position, just wanting to be taken, carried outside, boredom. So many things are expressed by the baby by just crying. So what a parent can do is to go systematically in terms of approach one by one. So see if the baby is crying for hunger. Very often, even if the baby is not crying for hunger, still the baby may be pacified by being breastfed or by being given a feed or by being given a pacifier. Your baby may require a diaper change. Baby may be just sleepy. Baby may be bored. Just taking the baby out for a walk on your balcony or maybe outside in your car for a small ride may actually help the baby feel better. Sometimes babies with excessive crying with a cluster of other symptoms such as regurgitation of milk or diarrhea or blood in stool may be diagnosed to have conditions such as cow milk protein allergy. Sometimes, as I said, crying excessively may be the only sign of more abnormal pathological disorders such as infections in the ear, urinary infection, or even infections in the brain. So the bottom line here is the baby getting pacified by simple home remedies such as keeping the baby close to your body, such as giving the baby a feed, changing the diaper, taking the baby out for a ride. If this does not happen and if the baby is refusing to also take feeds for more than 3 to 4 hours, then it is more likely to be a pathological or abnormal reason for cry and may require prompt medical attention.
Right, and many new moms have also worry about the frequency of urination and the stooling pattern of the newborns, right? And what would you suggest on this particular frequency of urination or stooling pattern, and what number of diapers do they have to change, or what is normal and what is abnormal in this regard?
Right. So when it comes to urination, passing at least 8 to 10 times urine or having 8 to 10 wet diapers is one of the important signs of adequacy of feeding. So ideally, a newborn baby who feeds say 10 to 12 times during the day would actually pass urine as many times or maybe even more number of times. When it comes to stooling, in the first few days after birth, a newborn baby is more likely to have multiple episodes of watery, loose, and even forceful gas-filled stools, which are quite common, especially when the baby is breastfed. Now, with passing days of postnatal life, the baby's stool tend to become more formed, maybe a little hard, especially when the baby is formula fed, and the frequency may come down to maybe once in a day, Sometimes it may also be as infrequent as one in 2 to 3 days. And as long as the baby is feeding well and not having any swelling, distension of the tummy, this should not be a cause of concern, as long as one has looked into the thyroid profile of the baby. That is, the baby's TSH must have been checked and found to be normal. So the stooling frequency can be very variable, but it is more important to have at least 10 wet diapers. That is, 10 times the baby should pass urine every day.
All the problems that you have discussed now are not so dreadful or not so dangerous. They have been the commonest problems which every mother faces, but they are associated with a lot of anxiety, especially in the first time mothers. So you have emphasized a lot on how to care and how to address them and relieve their anxiety as well. So thank you so much for addressing all of these newborn problems. And yes, viewers, this is all about the most common newborn problems. So stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you so much.